All right, cool. Well, I'm going to keep hitting the admit button throughout, but just to get us started here, I'm Peyton Warren. I am Client Success Executive here at Gorilla, and I'm one of your hosts for Industrial Marketing Live. Today, we've got some lovely co-hosts, guest speakers joining me and Matt. So we've got Grace Wright, one of our senior strategists here, and Aaron Weeks. And I know on the last call, Aaron was talking a little bit about SEO, and we definitely want to talk about SEO. But before we can even get into everything that SEO can do for us, we want to zoom back out and look at just content. Content is super, 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 okay, more admits. So glad to have so many of you guys here today. It's super important in the B2B world, and we want to dive into frameworks, aka content creation workflows, like how you can get the most out of your content, how you can reuse it, and just kind of see what's big in content in 2022. So before I kick it off to Grace, I want to just say a little housekeeping. Industrial Marketing Live is meant to be a conversation space. So this is a Zoom room. You can unmute yourself. Some of you are already unmuted. So of course, I ask that everyone respect the stage. We'll clubhouse it. While we're talking in the beginning, we're going to talk for about 20-30 minutes, and then we'll open it up and have questions. We want to hear what content y'all are planning in 2022 and kind of turn this into a bit of a workshop. Anything else you want to add, Matt?
No, I mean, I love to hear what you all are thinking about doing for content for 2022 or what you have in the works. Really look at this as a place to get feedback on that, or just, additional things to consider. Because I think it's really good to always have a feedback loop. Not everyone here has that internally, especially from other people who are experienced doing content. So, lean into that. Don't be afraid of that. This is definitely a place for us to make each other better. And so I want to make sure that that you all, this is like a no judgment space. We're definitely here to help more than anything. And so we're going to talk about frameworks. We could talk content for hours, so we won't get to like everything. I know there's some people here who have done some amazing things, even like Todd Klauser's here, which Todd's probably one of the leading dudes on YouTube and TikTok in B2B in general. So I definitely hope he unmutes himself and talks a little bit later. But yeah, bring your questions, bring your ideas of what you have, and let's workshop it. But other than that, Peyton, I think we can kick it off. Really excited for everyone to be here, by the way. This is an awesome turnout.
Yeah. I'm glad to see some familiar faces from the last session too. Okay, so let's do it. Grace, I want to start with you. I know that you've got strong opinions about content and definitely want to hear hot takes from anyone who's got them. But can you just kick us off with your thoughts on how we should be thinking about marketing in 2022?
Yeah, I mean, my thinking on what makes good content has evolved a lot over the years. My background is in writing. I actually used to be a senior writer here at Gorilla. But I, freelanced for magazines in college. And then, my first job out of school was as an SEO copywriter. Then over the last couple of years, I've done more email content distribution, and even wrote an email campaign that got a Gorilla client an $800,000 opportunity. We've started getting a video program off the ground. We've done podcast episodes, and then, getting into content distribution over the last couple of years as well. So, my thinking has evolved from the, written SEO article first mindset that a lot of manufacturers carry, even into 2022, and has matured into kind of more of an anything is possible mindset. But I think that, when anything is possible, that can be really paralyzing as a place to start. So, I think that that's why what we really wanted to focus on discussing today was, how do you even start choosing what topics to create content on? What medium, written, video, other should you go for? And how are you going to make sure it's seen by the right people? And so when it comes to content planning in general, I think that there are three mistakes that I see a lot of the time. The first one would be spending too much time trying to develop the perfect content strategy, whatever that means, that you never get started on anything. I've seen, you spend 6 months crafting the just right strategy and then another 3 months deciding what to prioritize first. I think my advice would be, don't let perfect be the enemy of good. The second mistake I see a lot is, not recognizing how much work it takes to create really good content. Sure, you could not overthink it and write an article in, 30 minutes and ship it because it's just for SEO and it, doesn't really matter. But, I think that the process engineers and operation folks that, we at least are trying to target can really sniff out that corporate ipsum content from, a mile away. And so I think that just recognizing that, good content really requires a lot of work, fully understanding the product, the customer, and creating, maybe not perfect piece of content, but at least pretty good. And then I think the third mistake that, I just kind of wanted to start off with here at the top of the call is, not putting the customer first. I think sometimes there's this temptation with content strategy to start with a keyword or start with a content topic that your sales team dictated to you. And I think you're starting in the wrong place when you don't center the discussion around the customer. I think a good content strategy starts with, thorough understanding of the problems the customer is experiencing and that your product solves, not a keyword list, and certainly not a list of topics just from your sales team. And so, doing a lot of, investigative customer research to know the pain points, questions, problems that your customer is experiencing. And then I think once you understand that, then you're in a good place to start selecting topics and thinking about content strategy. But yeah, I guess to circle back and meander back to the original question and hop off of my little soapbox that I really just jumped very eagerly onto. I think good content in 2022 puts the customer first. Good content teams move quickly without sacrificing quality. So you have to have depth, a distinct point of view. You have to be helpful. And then I think you use the insights about what worked and what didn't and feed those back into the content program. But yeah, that I'm gonna pause there. And
no, I think that's great. That's so great. And yesterday when we were doing this prep call, I almost wanted to make a drinking game out of the many times we said focus. So I kind of want to come back to that. It's like, yeah, you're talking about topics and customer strategy, but like so many of the manufacturers out there, they work with multiple industries, right? Multiple like market segments. And so like, I guess when you're trying to decide on topics, like how are you going to even start determining like where you should focus? And I have my own thoughts on that, but wanted to kind of put that out there for Aaron and Matt too, to chime in.
I'll jump in, Peyton. Focus is one of my favorite words. I know you'll hear from me quite a bit. What you really need to do in content today is interview your customers any chance you get. That's just going to equip you with the focus to write content that truly matters. And when we get to SEO, this will be interesting talk because everyone at Grillo calls me the SEO guru, which I love SEO, but quite often I recommend our clients to not start there. What I recommend they start with is talking to their customers every day. We have plenty of examples from the Grillo team, and I'm also working for our peers in the space of interviewing a customer, taking that soundbite, that pain point, literally taking that verbatim, putting it on an article, and then going to write it. Again, that's kind of what Grace was saying. It's, you don't write for Google, you write for your audience. Is if we can capture that piece first, that customer research, and do it efficiently, repeatedly.
That's why you can't get it.
Then, that's a great path forward to focus on good content. So I'll stop there, Matt. I know you have some thoughts too.
Yeah, I think we talk about interviewing customers as sort of like a starting point, and I think you've heard that you hear that from a lot of people because it's true. But I also recognize for a lot of people in this room that it's hard to talk to customers because there's barriers of access, and so you have to find other ways to kind of get that voice of customer, to be able to listen, to hear what they're saying. And when you don't have access to the customer, then you have to go find where they congregate or talk about stuff. And that means getting really scrappy about those kinds of things. And so there's a lot of different areas that you can learn about what your customer talks about or thinks about, or what sort of, makes them tick, without having to talk to them, even though that's the most optimal way to do it. So finding Reddit groups, finding Facebook groups, finding people who have topical authority about it on Twitter. I mean, really, really the answer to this is social media. It's just finding the right social media channel. Quora is another one. And then finding those groups and joining them, and really not using it to pitch or even distribute your content, but more so use it to listen as much as you possibly can. And that's going to feed a lot of ideas. I think another thing you learn a lot about your audience with that is the language that they use. And I think it's really important when you're making content, you're using the same language that your customer uses. I know all the time when I was in the welding industry, and Todd, who's listening in, I'm sure can relate, we would have people who would, there was always this sort of debate about what you called a nozzle, whether you called it a cone or a nozzle or something else. And so a lot of the way that you'd figure that out is it differed by region, but when you visited people in certain areas, they would call it something different. So I think understanding those sorts of nuances is important as you're creating content. And then the other thing is, when you're making content, having the end goal in mind for it. Like, who do I want to see this, and how am I going to get it in front of them? And that just goes back to the question of distribution. And we just had this talk in a prep call, not about this webinar necessarily, but about a different sort of thing we were doing for a prospective client. But it's like, for what purpose are we making this content, and how are we going to get it in front of them? And then let that by and large dictate the medium. And so, if you understand, like, well, we're going to use SEO, or we're going to use paid social, or we're going to use organic social, you're making content in a completely different way, and you have to package that message appropriately for that channel. And so I think another trap that I think marketers fall into, and it's really because of pressure you get more so externally or from your C-suite than what you put on yourself, is the feeling that you need to be like everywhere. And in reality, you probably just need to do one or two channels really, really, really well. You don't have, understand that the limits that you have in your department, you're not going to be able to do 4 to 5 channels really, really well. You just will not have the capacity. You're not going to have the bandwidth to repurpose content for that channel. And so part of doing your audience research is going to be figuring out which channels I'm going to make a bet on, and then give yourself a sustained period of time to produce and distribute the content on that channel. And then, have an expectation of what that result's going to be for you. Like how will I define success distributing on that channel? And then give myself a long enough time horizon to actually give that a chance to be successful or not.
I do want to jump in here real quick to the question about, like, if you are struggling with customer interviews. I was just talking to this with Mary here, if you want to jump on, Mary, but it's like, befriend your subject matter expert, become best friends with them. When I worked at Caterpillar, that's what I did as a new marketer, not, being confused on how to talk to customers, is you become best friends with your subject matter expert. They'll take you on a drive on the construction site, then you can talk to real customers. And that was really enlightening for me, my career early as a marketer. But Mary, I'm going to pull you in a little bit because I know we were just talking about this.
Yeah, for sure. When I was an in-house marketer, I was like desperate for knowledge. I was at a spray nozzle company, so pretty heavy subject matter experts in industrial specific engineering. So like steel, food and beverage, chemical processing, which was huge. So a big one I would do is just, hey guys, I'm like new in this industry. You're the team leader of this, industry specific group. Can you just talk to me for like 30 minutes? I'll buy a cup of coffee and like just keep it really general, really high level. And that was huge. And not only do you build this relationship, but you get awesome educational knowledge. So totally agree with that.
Yeah, the other way to get knowledge is, Katie talked about this on her LinkedIn earlier this week. She mentioned she loves to go to trade shows. She gets a chance to talk to customers, and that, obviously that's one arena by which to get a chance to get into the mind of your ideal buyer, or the people that you want to be targeting. But and Dale just mentioned here, like customers love to help others learn. And so I think another aspect of this is like, there's a lot of fear and trepidation about even trying to talk to your customer because you feel like you're bothering them. But really, I think customers are very eager and happy to help you if you have the right mindset going into it. And if you respect their time when you actually get it. So I think, and this is like really just sort of step one of what to focus on for content, but it really is such a foundational aspect that gives you so much qualitative information to figure out what to write. Because, we'll get in next about like keyword research, and keyword research is something you should be layering on top of the customer. Like keyword research is the quantitative insight almost, whereas the customer research or the audience intelligence, however you want to call it, is the kind of qualitative thing that makes the whole thing run really well.
Nice. So we also talked a little bit about like your sales team. Like you could lean into your sales team, even if you can't talk with the subject matter expert specifically. Like, what do y'all think about that? The value there?
So the sales team to me is the most suboptimal way to do it. I mean, aside from just guessing, which is obviously the worst, like just guessing is the last thing you want to do. But I mean, to me, just relying on the sales team is like one sort of view. So let's say that there are no social media groups. There is no keyword research to do. I can't talk to a customer. Okay, well, then you have your kind of current base of customers. So you got to go holistic. And so talk to product, customer service, and sales. So you get 3 different vantage points. And then at that point, that'll at least give you enough so you could filter through the either what they don't know or the slanted sort of aspect of it, or the, very sort of we're the best thing in the world aspect of it. Because your job as the marketer is to be kind of brutally objective about what you're going to communicate out there content-wise that's going to resonate. And it can't be there to make your sales team feel better. It actually has to be there to convey value to the people that you're targeting and going after and want to consume it and actually get something valuable out of it.
Okay, so we've talked a lot about ideas and like generating topic ideas, but I guess like the next step, right? So you've got all these ideas, you've got all these insights, you've got notes from trade shows in the past year or whatever, right? It's not like customer research necessarily expires, but then what? So we need to jump into like creating a plan. And I think the best example that I have of this, just is like in the last 2 weeks, is originally we wanted this second episode to be specifically about SEO. And within 2 weeks, we've pivoted, we've changed our mind. And now we're talking specifically on content. So there needs to be like that flexibility, that agility to change and to focus where you need to focus based on the business objectives or the goals. But I think traditionally content plans are like annual plans, right? Or is that not how y'all do it?
Well, I definitely have tried to do annual planning on content and have found it to be, generally speaking, a waste of time. I don't know if anyone else has found that to be the case or not, but I take it back to 2020, 2021, and COVID happened, and my entire content calendar got fell by the wayside like within 4 weeks. So I would personally be planning content in quarters. Normally, so let's say most of us here, we do a lot of different industries, or we have a lot of different product categories. And there's a couple ways to angle your content. You can angle it around your industry. You can angle it around your key persona, your ideal customer, or you can angle it around your product category. And so you're kind of building around that. And I would simply take it on a quarter by quarter basis to focus on one of those areas. So if I sell to shipyards and automotive and heavy fabrication and energy, I'm going to probably focus all of my content for the quarter on one of those key industries, and then work on distributing it to them. If it's more around a product category, so I sell robotic equipment, fume extraction, laser welding, and peripherals, chemicals, whatever it is. I'd focus a quarter on content for that, and then basically you're making yourself like a rinse and repeat. Because the obvious thing that you want to do is get yourself a base of knowledge so you can go back a year from now and repurpose, which we'll get into the aspect of repurposing content. But let's say you're starting relatively new. I mean, the worst thing that you can do is try to jump from category to category to category to category, because you're not giving yourself the chance to build the kind of 10x content pillar or competency building content around that you're going to need. Because obviously the goal of that focus is to make it a lot easier for you to do it in the future when you need to pick it back up. And when you're not giving yourself a chance to kind of go T-shaped on a product category or an industry, you're just cheating yourself out of the muscle memory of picking it back up when you decide you have to refocus there.
I mean, Peyton, kind of to your point, I think you have to stay nimble and willing to pivot. For one of our clients, I think every marketer has limited time and limited resources. When I meet a marketer who has unlimited budget and unlimited personnel, I'll let you know. But until then, I think focus is your best friend, which, I guess if we're playing a drinking game, take a quick sip. But, for one of our clients, they had limited budget, limited, time. And so we were thinking about how we can have the biggest impact with that. So we focused in on one segment, food and bev, and we're kind of thinking about what themes we want to touch on. I think one theme you want to touch on continually is and build is your brand. Who is your company? How are you positioning yourselves? What's your point of view? The other one is, based on customer insights, what are the themes you're noticing? What problems are people having? What questions are they asking when they're in the research phase? And that's when you can start to think about keywords, like, is there any type of search demand around these topics, and just kind of doing your due diligence as you're creating content to see if there's potential there. That's of course not, where you're starting, but doing that. And then I think another thing that, every industrial company could use more of is social proof case studies. Give your prospects the gift of going second. We've done this for another big company. Here's how we did it. Here's how we solved the exact problem we hear all the time in customer interviews, kind of giving them peace of mind that they can partner with you. Yeah. And also what you want to educate them about your product and how it's different. Continually educating them about, what features you have and also why those matter based on customer research. So
I did want to add.
Sorry, continue.
I did want to add something else real quick. So, because I'm a very process thinker. So when we start from research, Peyton was asking kind of like, how do you get to the plan? How we do it at Gorilla, and I think this works quite well. I'm interested to hear from my other strategists here, is we do a workshop where we align those insights with all the people we need, executive team, sales, anyone else, if there's more people in the marketing department, subject matter experts. We get them all in the same room and we talk about what we learned so we can align on what content matters most. And therefore we can also answer reservations to content on the spot. Again, we hear it all the time. We can't do video, right? Well, we can be in the room together, figure it out and move forward, because ideally with this plan, we just want to get action as quick as possible. I think that's the best way that we do it. I mentioned again, the other strategists, what you've done as well.
Yeah. I think, the best place to start ideating around content ideas is just looking at the customer insights. How we start those content strategy workshops is just presenting to the client side team, the rest of the team, what we found in our customer research. I think a good example of an idea, like an actionable idea that came from content strategy workshop and client or customer research is, there was a coatings company, and we did a lot of customer research and we found that they weren't competing against other coatings companies. They were competing against other insulation products beyond just coatings. So when we figured that out based off of real customer interviews, we realized there was search potential around comparing those different insulation products, including coatings, but also including people that they didn't maybe realize they were competing against. And so by providing education on that, you get to be where someone is when they're considering your product. And that isn't a content idea that came out of customer insights. But I think that, that probably falls under questions or problems. That's kind of one bucket of content themes you want, but you wouldn't want to just focus on problems. You also want to proactively educate about your product. You also want to build your brand and do social proof. So, but that's just kind of one start to finish idea. that came out of
Also,
that.
I also think one thing that you have to develop with your content, aside even it's just as much as the education and all the other aspects, is your point of view. Like, I think one thing that I see almost every industrial company have the eternal struggle with is like, oh my God, I'm going to alienate people if I take a strong stance on why I think things should be done in a certain way, or why doing it this way is better. And I think that's largely to the detriment of people, because whether you like it or not, people are drawn to a point of view. This is sort of the era. This is the era of content that we're in right now. Like 5 or 6 years ago, you could just win on being super educational and down the middle and kill it on SEO and basically build your entire marketing content that way. But today, with what I would call information disbursement, because information is basically spread everywhere across various social media channels in much smaller bites of information in completely different mediums, a point of view is critical to have in this day and age. And the point of view could be anything from American made to the original fenestration machine, or whatever. But you need to actually have a point of view for your market to consume, agree or disagree with. And then your idea should be, more than anything, is the people who agree with you, great. You need to continue to pump that out, build affinity and trust. You get more into the value based, and eventually they come inbound to you. Or when your team goes outbound, they know who you are and they agree with your point of view. And they're like, yeah, you're the kind of company I'd love to work with. Or the ones who don't agree with you, guess what your objective at that point is? Your objective at that point is to shift their belief to your belief system. And so you need to figure out what those gaps are, and then go after them consistently with your content. So I think for industrial companies, like, the biggest struggle is the struggle that we actually have to have something interesting to say that may ruffle some feathers. But that's honestly where you're going to get the most traction with your content, is intentionally being willing to alienate people. Because if you play it down the middle, there's no reason for people to stop and read your stuff in the first place.
How do you bring the leadership team along with that? Because that's kind of risky,
I think, it is definitely risky, but that is how you win. In today's day and age, the best thing you could do to go to your leadership team and get buy-in for it is just look at the baseline consumption of your content and just ask them, like, objectively, is this good enough for you? Is our blog traffic good enough for you? Is our social media following good enough for you? Is the way people talk about our company good enough for you? Like, are you satisfied with this? And if you're the marketing person in-house and you tell them point blank, because I'm not, because this doesn't actually compel people to do anything, in my opinion, it should give you a little bit of leeway to do that. Because honestly, what you want to work on with this is like the story that you want to tell to your market. And we live and work in an industry that's a lot about specs and pricing. Dale, who's on this meeting with us, knows all about pricing as kind of a lever. but really what it's about is, before you even get to pricing, is agreeing with the way that you see the industry and the market. And you're only going to get that way through sharing a point of view and a story. And yes, you may piss people off by doing that, but that's how you get done. Like my trade show take is controversial. Not everyone agrees that my take. The trade shows are in my opinion, not really worth doing. But because I got people who agree with me and disagree with me on it, it means that I at least have something to build off of, and can either bridge the gap with people who don't agree with me, or find new ways to iterate on the people who do agree with me. So to me,
starts a conversation.
What's that?
It
starts a conversation. Exactly. And all you want to do is, and the minimum you should be wanting to do with your content is get people to talk about you. And once you're doing that, you've more than gone halfway through the battle.
Yeah, our job as marketers is to persuade people of stuff. And I think step one to persuading someone is like, you have to capture their attention. I feel like, to use your example on point of view, Matt, like if you had said trade shows are okay, like
no one cares about it. No one's going to act like, oh yeah, I guess trade shows are okay. That's not.
Go ahead and you wouldn't capture any attention by saying that. I don't know. I think that you don't win by joining the corporate ipsum down the middle choir. You know what I mean? So.
Yeah. And I wouldn't even call it a hot take, which I saw someone just comment on. It's more like something rooted in my own personal experience that I know that I've experienced in my life. I've experienced the failure of not getting remotely enough out of the time and expense I took out of trade shows, which is what helped me formulate that position. Now, there's plenty of people who've gotten a lot out of their trade shows and who disagree with me vehemently on that. And maybe it's not my cup of tea. It's not my forte, but that doesn't mean I don't think it's worth it. If I go back in house at another industrial company, the first thing I'm going to do is scrutinize our trade show and say, do we need to be doing these in favor of other activities? Because one, is it worth the time and energy and opportunity cost? And B, is it the best use of my talent? Which I would say no. So yeah, I mean, to me, that's sort of the reason why your POV should be rooted in your personal experience. Like when I worked at Binzel at the welding company, our POV was lightweight torches are the way to go. And you know what the trade-off with the lightweight torch is? It's not as durable. But because it's lighter, your welders are more comfortable when they're working. They can get in better positions. We used higher quality consumables. And so the consumables last longer, which was really the bigger cost driver. And because the torches were lighter weight and easier to manipulate, they lasted longer because the welders weren't hammering them and beating them to crap. So that was our point of view. And I didn't think we leaned into it enough. And so I made it one of the first things I did with our content. And when we launched a new flagship lightweight torch, it ended up eating a ton of market share out of our competitors because we leaned into that with our point of view, with my content, and with the way that I instructed our sales team to talk about it when they went out in the market and discussed it. So, having a point of view on a product category is important. And having one that's definitive and unique as well. Like saying it's the most robust doesn't matter. Saying you have the best customer service is kind of a post-sale thing, and it's a really hard thing to prove to people. Like saying that we have the most lightweight torch on the market is easy because I can put it on a fish scale and weigh it next to a bunch of others and say, look, there, it's lighter. Now do you want to try it? So, you need actually a point of view that you can back up and show either through some sort of qualitative or quantitative social proof. It goes back to social proof, right? Or proof.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm going to jump in real quick. I want to frame kind of what Matt and Grace are both saying in a different light. Is I think if you want to take a point of view, a way to have the framework is these three things. If content is a product for my business, people are going to find value for it. Well, either needs to be the first piece of content on this topic, needs to be the best piece of content on this topic, or it needs to be different than my competitors. So if you want a way to view content in that point of view, I think you focus on those three things. Focus again. Everyone take a drink. Best, first, and different. And like, that's going to help you out because when you're, again, back, if you do the workshop, if you're doing the plan, be critical of every piece of content. Is this the first? Is this the best? Or this is different? That's going to help you kind of actionize that point of view that Matt and Grace are talking about.
So we alluded to this a little bit earlier about repurposing content, and I want to come back to that because I feel like we're talking about point of view. We're talking about like you kind of have to like drip that out. You can't just like all of a sudden like run in someone's face and scream at them. Like that's not always going to work. I mean, maybe sometimes, I guess, intimidation, but no, you've got to like drip this story out and kind of, when you're using paid social is what I'm thinking. And like when you're in the feed, like when you want to, like, how are you going to repurpose these blog posts that do have a point of view on platforms like LinkedIn or on platforms like Facebook? Like, how do you go from like, this blog post is doing really well, it helped us like get all this market share because now we're talking about how our torch is lightweight, to getting the most mileage out of something that works well?
Well, I think this goes back somewhat to like what you're planning to do with that content. So like when you write an article that's like for SEO, like the goal of writing an SEO based article is compounding search traffic. And so if you achieve that goal, it's doing exactly what you want it to. When you're doing something more so for the purpose of actual thought leadership, and if you're going to do that with using the written word, yes, you will post it as an article, but that's really the bare minimum of what you should be doing with it. You take a kind of thought leadership position, like Myanmar is the new epicenter of the methamphetamine drug trade or whatever. And so that's like a position to take where you want to repurpose that thought leadership position, and you want to start to drip that out on social, probably with your subject matter expert. You can use your company page as well as like kind of a ticker to sort of be another sort of vantage point on that. But when you're developing that kind of content, you're also looking at ways to repurpose it either via pitching it to publishers, by looking at podcasts. You can go pitch that thought leadership angle on to go talk about it in more detail. So it really depends on sort of the goal of the content. Is the goal for it to get compounding traffic? If so, it's going to sit like that and it's going to basically be that. And then the primary means to repurpose that kind of content is if it's successful in getting me search traffic, it probably stands to reason it would do really well on YouTube as well, because YouTube is its own search engine. So how can I repurpose that written content into a YouTube video and basically run the same play on a different search engine? Whereas if I'm going to make a piece of content that's for thought leadership, okay, I made this piece of thought leadership that's not designed to get traffic. How do I break this out to redistribute it on other channels? And then how do I give myself more mileage by pitching that topic piece to an audience that already exists, either on someone's podcast or via someone's magazine, or even on someone's YouTube show? There's plenty of YouTube shows out there as well, or TikTok channels. So basically you're trying to take your thought leadership and then go find an existing audience who would ideally get value out of that, and then go try to collaborate with that person in some way, shape, or form. And then you also have the other obvious purpose for content, which is sales enablement, which is more of a one-to-one or a one-to-few approach, where I'm literally helping craft emails or put this little micro event on for people who are at this certain stage of pipeline. And, we're going to run this kind of one-to-few event. Maybe it's for first 30, 60, 90 days on this, or, hey, here's a success story with an existing customer who's used this product successfully before. This is what their experience looked like. Maybe you give them a compensation of some kind for their time. It's a little bit of a Q&A, a little bit of a mastermind session. But for me, it all goes back to like, what is my end goal for this? And then what's the most logical way to get the mileage, to get as much mileage out of it as possible? Does that make sense?
Yeah, it made sense to me.
Okay,
I mean, awesome. I wanted to make sure that if Grace or Aaron had anything they wanted to add, I didn't just jump right in. But I do want to make sure we take time for questions if anyone has any. And I am interested just to ask the group, like at large, everyone.
Writ large.
Did I stutter? Sorry. What content you're excited about in 2022? Like if there's anything that you've got on the docket that
anything you're trying to roll out, like anything you're trying to roll out, like LinkedIn thought leadership for your company, that's hard to do. Like really freaking hard. And I commend anyone trying to undertake that. Or TikTok. Thanks, Todd. Thanks, TikTok, for chiming in on that. Because first off, it's really hard to roll out new programs, especially when, I hopefully and ideally had something that's worked quite well for you. And at that point you want to expand, because expanding makes sense. Your audience is moving to a different channel, or there's opportunity there and you want to pursue it. I mean, sometimes it's hard to get budget, bandwidth in order to do that. So if you have anything you're rolling out, I definitely would love to hear it. And just hear kind of what you're planning on doing. Because even at Gorilla, we have a limited number of things we do on content based on our own kind of menu of deliverables, but there's a slew of other things you could do out there that, we're not doing. There's literally like 50 different ways to do content. You could do something as basic as write a blog article, or something as crazy as compose a song, Mm-hmm. That's all content. That's the range that exists. So it's just I would be unafraid to try something a little outside the box if you have something that's a little more in the box that is working for you.
So I'm going to add that, Matt. I think, something like we're doing with this Zoom here, when we're talking about repurposing, is like out of this Zoom, we're getting a video, an audio file, and we're going to get the transcription from Zoom for the written word. So we just spent, almost 45 minutes of our time. Now we have 3 pieces of content that we can now go distribute into the market. Again, we use paid social for guaranteed content distribution, but that's just the way to start getting a process, repeating it. It's going to make all this content creation so much easier.
Oh, Jared had a question. Let's bring him on.
Jared Beasley, you want to unmute, or should I read it for you?
Yeah, I can unmute.
Yeah.
One issue I come across a lot is getting good and worthwhile backlink opportunities and trying to get domain authority up. So I've been kind of doing some research into possible opportunities for kind of paying for backlinks through getting content posted on credible sources. I'm just kind of curious in your background if you've seen that as worthwhile, or does it kind of end up being a waste of time?
Want to take that, Matt, or you want me?
I think Aaron and Grace probably have the most experience with that, and so I'll let them chime in.
So I'll throw something out there. And Grace, I know you're doing this right now, so I definitely want to hear your feedback. Jared, it comes down to time. Exactly what you're saying is, do I have the time to build these backlinks? Can I hire a vendor to do it? It is very time intensive. Does it give you lift? Yes. But if you're a one-person in-house marketer, you only have 8 hours in the day, like what can you do? Grace, I know you've been doing this, so do you have anything to report on kind of like the impact of it?
Yeah, I mean, so there was a time in my life where we would create guest blog posts, pitch them to industry publications. We would get it picked up by a couple of them. It would get a backlink to our client site and that type of thing. It's a very, very time consuming process, but it's worthwhile. I mean, domain authority is a huge, obviously ranking factor, and backlinks contribute to that. Today we use the link like a partner essentially. I think the thing that I would, with the link partner we use, it's like we're not paying for the link, we're paying for someone else's time to basically do all of the good things, the outreach that we used to do in-house. So someone who's really streamlined that process, we're not paying the publication for the link because that, frowned upon. But that's what we do. And we just find they handle that really well. We do what we do really well. But backlinking is absolutely still important. I think that it comes down to what Matt and Aaron were saying. It's just how much is that the best use of your in-house team's time? I think there are people who do it faster, who have that.
I've got a question about this, and maybe it's just ignorance, but like, it doesn't matter if it takes you a little bit of time. Like, can you not just put this on the back burner and then come back to it maybe when you have like a slower season at work? Or
Well, I think I would have a slightly different take than Aaron and Grace. I would wonder if backlinking is the absolute the easiest and most direct route for me to build my search traffic on that particular site. Are there things I could do by simply repurposing that article and updating it and taking a really close look at making sure I have all my H1s and H2s lined up in a row? Am I linking internally appropriately? Am I layering best practices on the post already? Like, do I have a breakout CTA, an inline CTA, an end of page CTA? Do I have multiple calls of action being repeated on the page with a kind of slightly different value proposition each time? Am I putting schema markup on it if I already have if I already have traffic to the site? So, backlinking is the most time consuming way. And the other thing I would look at is like, am I getting crushed because my domain authority isn't enough? Or is it more so like, does my content just need to get 10x'd and improved in a facelift? Because one thing that I find among a lot of industrial companies is most of them do not have great domain authority, and most of them do not have a lot of backlinks. So a lot of the times you can beat them by just making better content than them. Without even having to, sweat so much getting the backlink. Although, Jared, if you've exhausted all the other things I just like listed off, and backlinks is, in your reason, the end all be all for you jumping that person, then by all means, it's simply a matter of weighing your time against your budget and doing what's best for you.
Thanks.
Was that anything you wanted to add on to that, Jared, or was that helpful?
No, that was very helpful. I appreciate you all tackling that for me.
Okay. I know Bruce commented earlier about doing stuff on LinkedIn, and I wonder if he wants to come on and kind of talk about it a little bit, because I've talked to Bruce before, and I know Bruce has a very niche group of people that he's trying to sell into. Are you there, Bruce?
I think he's here.
Hey, Bruce.
Yeah, just unmuting. Hey, everybody. Always great listening to these topics. I will engage more as we go along. I have a huge market. I have a huge niche. I have a huge prospect base. However, I'm selling another Me Too thing out there. And that's really, really, really hard to have a unique proposition. I've had some success. I joined this company 3 years ago. They've been around 50 years, but they never did business in the United States. It's an Italian machinery company. And, the market's crowded, it's a mature market. If somebody's already got the Ford and the Chevy in the garage, what do they need another Fiat for? So it's been really brand awareness. It's been, why these guys? I mean, the need is there. It's a $5 billion business. So this is some of my little tips I try to impress with my friends in Italy.
A postcard?
Your business, your branding. Yeah. It's great.
Okay. So, they think the Italian mentality is, hey, we make it the best of machines. And I'm like, yeah, but nobody knows you. So help me, spread the gospel according to you guys. So I've exercised, as Matt says, much LinkedIn stuff as I can do. I don't do sales stuff. I try to be informational, topical related, some product related, but no sales, no this, no that. The company in Italy has some other lines of business that I'm backhandedly responsible for, but my primary focus is packaging machinery. And that goes into almost any industry that has consumer products that are going on the shelf, cosmetic, food, beverage, pharmaceutical, nutraceutical, health and beauty aids. If it's on the shelf somewhere, it had to get A, filled, B, put in a carton, C, in a case, and D, put on a pallet somewhere. But that's been my challenge. And I go back to the Italians and they're like, hey, we'll go to the trade shows. Well, they don't send me any machines to show at the trade shows to show their superiority. It's been tough. That's why I had no gray hair when I joined this company 3 years ago.
So the machine, it's a machine company that does packaging. Does it do like
it does packaging machinery? So people buy consumer products. People buy our machines to
package with it. Does it do thermoforming and flow wrapping?
We do. We don't do flow wrapping.
No,
I've been there.
Okay. So, I mean, obviously there's a bunch of different kinds of ways to do packaging on machines. And let's be honest about this, like almost every major packaging machinery manufacturer is based in Europe. I think the biggest one in the world is based in Germany, and probably the second biggest one is based in Spain. So really, I mean, the fact that you sell out of Italy is neither a competitive advantage nor disadvantage, really. So I think for you, the challenge is going to be, more aggressively probably connecting with people up and down the sort of decision-making tree on LinkedIn. I'm sure that they exist on there, but I mean, I would just get more aggressive finding people kind of up and down that.
I mentioned to somebody in the link, the loop there, I have about 2,500 contacts in my world. Okay. But they know me, see me, heard me. So if they're not interested, how do I get the other million people? How do I get to them? Show me.
I mean, look, the resources you have at your disposal obviously are slim, just given that, you're a one-man show. To me, I would focus on doing as much product marketing around that machine that you possibly can. I know you said you did a little bit of it. I'd probably lean a little bit more into it if you could. There's also like frameworks that I would think about on LinkedIn for yourself. You should be posting from your personal profile and not the company profile. If they have like an English or a North American one.
They do both.
All right. I would lean much more into your personal profile than the company profile right now. I would look at yourself, like try to think of a few sort of, let's say, tension points that you can rally yourself around, like misconceptions around packaging machinery to correct, hard truths. I actually do this with a client of mine who actually does digital packaging. And then there's a few others that I could think of off the top of my mind, like there's misconceptions, emerging trends, things like that. I assume this company does R&D and is actually trying to improve its machine year over year. They have to be doing something. No? Okay.
So because go with me for a second. You look at a carton, okay, a toothpaste carton. It ain't changed in 50 years. What's changed?
Changed a little bit. They've changed the way they do the cap monitoring and stuff.
I said a carton. I didn't say the tube. I didn't say the tube. I said the carton.
Okay. Got it.
And the case is the case.
Well, isn't the
Pallet
carton
is a pallet is a pallet.
Isn't the carton moving more towards
Sacred.
sustainable?
But that's material. That's not the cartoner.
True. Okay.
See, I passed the test.
You did. Have
You can see I have the issues that I have.
Mhm.
So anyway, you put a tube, a bottle, a jar, a blister, a pouch, a sachet, all these primary packaging things go into a carton, and the carton ain't changed in a long,
think
long
that-
time.
To me, I see the primary challenge for you is getting in front of more of the people who could potentially be a
Trade show.
trade show. I know, but at the absence of trade shows, which don't happen every week for you to attend, to me, the answer would be 2,500 contacts on LinkedIn is not that much. I would be aggressively pursuing more people within your target market, and then focus yourself on trying to do more product marketing. Ideally, not trying to push the brand name of the product, but really just trying to educate around features that matter in these things and why they should be looking at some things over others. I know that for the biggest packaging company, packaging provider in the world, one of the things that people gripe about them all the time is it takes weeks and weeks and weeks to get a part and support because they got to come all the way from Germany. And that was something that happened with my own company. So, definitely find through customer interviews, if you can talk to a couple of people, weaknesses or tension points that people feel working with the status quo out there, and then figure out ways that you could exploit that, but basically provide a counterpoint or contribute value to what is sort of lacking. You can basically fill a void.
Yeah.
Thank you, sir. I've taken up enough of your valuable time. Appreciate that.
Appreciate it.
Pass the torch, pass the talking stick.
Yeah, well, okay, so we got one question that just came in from Trey. Not necessarily industrial, but any tips or advice for growing SEO for small businesses?
You first, Aaron.
And yeah, if we run out of time, these are the questions we want to just start capturing so we can do them in the next Industrial Marketing Live as well. But we wanted to do an in-depth SEO, but we thought content was better to start with first. I think the best thing you can do is understanding this foundation that you don't want to rank for every single keyword. You want to rank for the keywords that matter most to your customers and then work from that. And I think how that plays out is when you start doing keyword research, you want to look for those keywords that have medium search volume or lower search volume that you can win on, because the big fish, they're not writing content for that. That'd be the one play you could do to kind of, I won't use the word focus, I'll use precision, be precise with your effort. I think that's definitely where I would start. There's a lot of technical things you could do as well, which we may save for another lesson, but Matt or Grace, got anything you want to add on top of that?
I think one other thing to focus on with terms of SEO is, it's really easy and tempting to go after like keywords with a ton of search traffic that like are difficult. And you're probably better off focusing on things that are longer tail, like keywords that have less volume and are easier for you to go grab. So I would start small in that, because given that you're a small business, you trying to go after, keywords that are much more difficult where people actually have backlinks and stuff like that, that's a really tough road for you. So I would definitely focus on smaller keywords with less volume. And the other thing I would do is try to focus as bottom funnel as you possibly can, as well. So anything you could do to get into like what are the things people that compete in your space like never want to effing talk about? They never want to talk about how much stuff costs. They never want to talk about reviews of other products or like what things look like there. And they never want to do anything that's a comparison. So you have, and those are that's how the lizard brain of most people work on search. It's like this thing alternative, this thing cost, this thing reviews, right? So if you want to be the guy who's going to go there and talk about reviews, pricing, comparisons, well, that's an easy way for you to win, because most of your more established competitors don't want to touch that, because right back to what I said earlier, that would involve having a point of view or being controversial.
I think for me, it's not looking at keywords in a vacuum. I think remembering that there's a person and an intent behind the search, and making sure you're meeting that intent. I think a good example of that when you start with keywords, my first job, I was an SEO copywriter. One of my first assignments, I was supposed to write this article for a company. And I was like, you don't even provide this service. Why are you trying to rank for this term? They're like, well, we're going to convince them that they're going to not want this product and want our product. And I think just remembering the business impact of what you're trying to accomplish, and how people actually search, and remembering the intent behind the search, and making sure you're meeting that intent, I think is really important. Grounding advice.
I know we've only got just a few minutes left. Craig had another question in the chat.
Bring Craig on. I want to talk to Craig.
All right,
Come on,
Craig.
Craig.
Also, Craig, before, most importantly, like, tell us about the earplugs in the background that's going on here.
I work for a company that makes hearing protection and respiratory protection. Also,
That's awesome.
You're
on brand.
You're on brand today, Craig.
yeah, exactly.
Good man.
So that's the earplug. Those are earplugs that we make at our company in the background.
Oh, sorry, I thought they were vegetables.
Yeah, most people think they're candy. Even in the dispensers, a lot of people think that they're candy as well, just because of the colors, I guess. But I was just following up on what Aaron was saying about finding those medium to low volume keywords or long tail keywords that where you might be able to find some success. I was just curious of his opinion of any of the free services that you can use, whatever that is, Google, I can't remember the Google name one right now, or if you really do have to pay for like Demand Jump or SEMrush or something like that, even if it's just for a month or two. I don't even know if that's a possibility, but
Definitely. I'll jump in. I did put something in the chat here, but I think the suggestion of SEMrush, we use it. You don't necessarily have to pay for it. I think you can look up free keywords. Another great software that allows you to do some free searches is called SpyFu, SPYFU. And even Moz, you can download the Moz toolbar on your Google Chrome browser, and it'll start to give you some data on keyword searches while you're on Google, but also when you visit sites that's free to you. So those are just 3 places to start. If you want free data so you can start to think about it, I would start there. And then again, just finding those medium to low keywords. Just start in the practice of like opening up that Moz toolbar, seeing what they rank as medium to low, start writing them down. Over time, you're gonna notice patterns. You're gonna see the context of them. You're gonna see, oh, this keyword I keep seeing pop up. I've never seen any of my competitors write content for that. That's your play. Go write that content. And again, it's gonna take a little bit of consistency looking at that data over time.
I'd say one other thing to add, Craig, is Google Search Console. If you don't already have that installed, is a huge help for you, because basically if you install that on your Google Analytics, if you can see what pages you have that have a lot of impressions that don't have a lot of clicks, and you can almost reverse engineer the keyword from there and then figure out what the keyword is that you should be working on.
makes sense. Thanks.
All right. See, Bruce
Cool.
has his hand raised. Bruce, do you have something you want to come in, chime in with a little bit? Okay.
Come on in, Bruce.
Yeah, since we're on SEO, I'm a very simple guy, and I keep it simple. So if I sell a cartoning machine, I wonder what my keyword search word would be. So, I mean, I go out there and I Google cartoning machines and I find all my competition, and my company, our SEO sucks. And I've been telling them that, but they don't seem to get it. So, I mean, should I keep trying to get them to do whatever we need to do? We don't have that many keywords. I mean, if I was buying a Chevy Corvette, I wouldn't Google makes me feel younger when I drive. I mean, I'm not a marketing guy. I'm a sales guy. I'm an SME, subject matter expert on packaging. So I'm just trying to learn and pick up from you geniuses, the right kind of approach that I should have in trying to get the phone to ring. Lead gen is 0 in 2021. So let's see if I can get something better than 0 in 2022. Thanks.
Go ahead, Aaron. You pop in.
I mean, I think Matt and I are probably gonna say the same thing, which is like, you can't convince people's mind at the end of the day. If they don't want to do SEO, like what can you do in your control? It sounds like if we want to talk to more customers, like LinkedIn organic distribution gives you right in the face of your customers. You can comment on their profiles. You can talk to them every single day. I think that would be a better play. It's a good question, especially if you don't think you have a lot of keyword volume. I think if Matt and I were looking at that strategy, we would say, okay, well, that's just not the focus then. Like you can focus in other areas and get that lift. Matt, do you kind of agree, or you got a different route to take?
I agree with that. And I think the other thing you could do, Bruce, is just do what your competitors and your parent and your company will simply not do or go. And if that means you going somewhere like way out there, like I'm gonna be the guy who's gonna try TikTok and packaging because no one else is doing it, and it's the only place where I can be first and interesting, then I would say lean into something like that and try it for yourself. I think you need to go somewhere, Bruce, where the algorithm is in your favor, and in Google it's not, and in LinkedIn it's diminishing, and in TikTok right now is what represents for most people probably the widest ocean.
Okay. Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
All right, we've got one more question that just came in. We'll close out with this one, rounding us back to the top of the hour.
Mm-hmm.
Can I take us back to the conversation about talking to customers?
Go ahead, Darren.
What's your question?
All right. Hey, thanks for letting me ask you. So my question is, this is one of my priorities this year is talking to customers. I finally built up the trust, I guess, to have permission to do that. So I'm looking forward to it, but I'm wondering from your experience, the confidentiality between me as the marketer and the customer, because I can see other people in the organization going, oh, what did XYZ say? You know, do you typically share that information, or is it better to kind of establish that with the customer so they know everything they say is going to be just, used in aggregate format or something?
I think it's something you work out with that person who's willing to speak with you on the front. Like, hey, do you mind if I share this with key people at my company by name, or would you rather keep it confidential? And if you want it confidential, then the only thing that people are going to know about you is your title and some firmographic information about your company, like industry, company size, stuff like that. Because that would be the kind of stuff you'd want to kind of build a voice of customer program around, right? So for me, ask permission at the outset, ask permission to record it as well, because you're going to want to go back and probably listen to the call. And then say, look, if you want this to be confidential, I will respect that wish. If you're okay with me sharing your information and the conversations we had explicitly with key people in my organization, I mean, for me, that would be best case scenario, but I understand for you, it might not be, and I will respect that. It's kind of the same thing as like when you get a case study with a customer. Like not all customers want their company on the case study, in which case you have to do an anonymous one, which is fine. You shouldn't be afraid of that whatsoever, but it's something that you should understand at the outset, so you can make sure that your final package reflects that. And then you should have something planned, like, okay, if they want to be anonymous, what are the things I'm going to build around so I can segment my voice of customer program, my customer interviews appropriately.
Okay. Thank you.
Does that make sense?
Yeah, it does. Thanks.
Okay, great.
Yeah, we do a ton of customer interviews here. I know we talked about customer interviews a lot at the top. So I think just the other thing that we've done after the fact too is we do let everyone know that we're recording. We transcribe those. But then once we're actually ready to use a quote, depending on the relationship, we go back and we send that specific quote to the customer to say, this is what we were going to say. This is what the end product is going to look like. Is that okay with you? Is it okay if we use your logo? Just being considerate about all their different aspects of how they want their logo to be used or not, is nice for relationship building too.
Sure.
Yeah. I think for you, Darren, also that's always great stuff, because it's so hard for marketing to build relationships with customers, just because you're kind of the third wall. Customer service and sales, obviously 1 and 2. It's a really good chance for you to do something a little extra for them, like give them a gift card for DoorDash, or even send them lunch as a thanks for that time. And it's a great way for you to just kind of further cement your relationship with that person. And it's just a really nice, simple gesture that people normally appreciate a lot.
Yeah, good idea. Thanks.
Mhm.
Appreciate it.
Yep, for sure.
Okay, well, we said we were going to talk about content for a long time, and we definitely went over an hour. So thanks everyone for hanging on with us. I'll go ahead and wrap us up there, but we really, really appreciate everyone coming out to Industrial Marketing Live. We're back at it. February 8th is our next one, a Tuesday.
Super Bowl
Look up
Industrial
on it.
Marketing Live. That's what it's going to be.
We'll do. We'll have to come. Speaking of content, let's theme it out. Maybe we'll all wear jerseys or something. Who knows?
I get all my new Commanders jersey at that point, maybe. So yeah, that'll be great.
Awesome. Okay, y'all. Well, I hope you have a great rest of your week, and thanks so much for joining Industrial Marketing Live.
Bye.